Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we are working on the final build for Mount Komorebi and we're going to be creating a karaoke bar that is based on the Disney princesses. So in the planning process of Mount Komorebi, one of the first ideas that was brought up right away was doing a karaoke bar. It makes a ton of sense to have one in this world, and I think by default Snowy Escape comes with one in this world. It might even come on the slot, or it's a lounge. It's one of the two. But it just makes a lot of sense to have one here, and right away we knew if we're going to put a karaoke bar, which I think we probably will do another one, don't get me wrong, but if we're going to do one in the Disney save, it probably makes a lot of sense to go here. And I knew we wanted to have the karaoke bar, but I was kind of like, well, what do we theme it after? How do we make it more Disney themed? And the idea was brought up to make it obviously Disney princess themed because of the fact that the princesses are all known for their singing, and specifically in the save file, they are a club of musically inclined singers. All of them have high singing skills, and it's just kind of one of those things that goes hand in hand. So it makes a lot of sense to do something based after them. So the original idea was to basically have a bunch of rooms that were each themed after a different princess. And I had like a running list of princesses that I wanted to include. I think I had picked out 4 or 5, and they were kind of a wide spectrum of princesses. I think I picked like Mulan and maybe Tiana and I think Belle, those kinds of characters. And then I did a late patron meeting for the Disney save planning to work out a couple of last minute lots and details. And the idea was suggested for me to base this lot after the Princess Fairy Tale Hall from Disney World or Disneyland. There's a location in both. They're very different on the outside, but basically for both parks, they sort of serve as like the meet and greet area for the princess characters. And without having gone and just basically doing research and what I could find from pictures and visuals and concept art and all that kind of stuff from researching this build and this location, I thought that that was such a great idea. It does make this lot look quite a bit different than the other ones that are in this world, but it's so uniquely Disney princess. It has like a very similar aesthetic to a castle. It's kind of like a combination of a castle and a hall, and I just thought it was a really, really brilliant idea. I was super excited about this from the beginning of the world, and doing a Disney princess themed lot. The princesses are some of my favorite characters, obviously, so finally getting to do a lot that was literally based around a bunch of them at one time is kind of a dream. These are the things that I had imagined for early on in the Disney save when I was like really excited and planning the beginning of doing the Disney save. These are the types of lots that really get me excited, but I would have never come up with the idea to base it after the location in Disney World without patrons because I've never been to Disney World or Disneyland, so I wouldn't have even thought to use that as a reference. I think other than that, this location might have ended up looking a little bit more Chinese inspired, specifically because I've done a lot of Mulan content here, or just in general Japanese inspired, and I probably would have went maybe even a little bit more modern with it, but I love this idea so much better. It has this very fancy castle aesthetic. It is so elegant on the inside. It's very themed, and it's kind of not what you would really think for a karaoke bar, but we'll probably do one that is more traditionally like what you would standardly think as a karaoke bar later on in a different world. So this is a very unique experience. And basically the exterior of this, it's a little bit of a combination of me doing some concept art and using some concept art from the Princess Fairy Tale Hall in Disney World specifically. And I obviously had to take my own personal spin on it because that location is kind of in, as far as I can tell, it almost looks like it's in a strip of other locations, and the buildings are sort of connected in an odd way. And really I based like the entryway and the front part of this off of the Fairy Tale Hall, and then I basically made the rest around it to fit what I needed for the build, which was a grand hallway. I wanted like this almost ballroom type of entrance where it's very, it would be like the check-in area, but for the Sims it requires a bar, so we had to put a bar in there and things like that. I wouldn't have ideally really wanted to add a bar in here if I'm honest. And then I wanted to have these private rooms that were each based after the princesses and have them each be like their own experience. So it would be almost like you come, you check in, you get a drink downstairs, and then you would pay to go into like the individual room, and you could have the Tiana room or the Snow White room, and they're all very similar in the way that they're set up, but the decor is specific to the princess. And there's actually a couple of really special features about this lot that I haven't done in the Disney Save so far that I'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. So I had to design the building itself to make sure that we had enough room for Disney princesses and have these like mirrored rooms that were all the same size and shape so we could get the same experience for every single room. Now, the Princess Fairy Tale Hall in Disney World features these really beautiful portraits that are, I think, I couldn't actually find where these portraits were located, but they are kind of known for this location, and Disney even did like pins that you could collect based after them. And so even though I had originally made a list of like, here's the princesses that we're going to include in the build, I wanted to change direction and go after the princesses that are featured in this hall, at least specifically in the portrait versions. And then I did add 2 additional ones on top of that because we had the space and because I felt like it was a little bit odd that 2 specific princesses weren't included, although you could make the argument for any of them. And realistically, there's still one that kind of got cut that traditionally I think Disney would include in something like this, but they have these portraits at this location in Disney World and it is like very specific, and I knew that I wanted to base it off of that. So for today's build, we are going with Tiana, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Jasmine, Mulan, Cinderella, and Ariel. Oh, and Rapunzel. And I think that makes 8. So each of the rooms are going to be featured in the video today, which is why this is a bit longer. There really was not a ton that I could cut from here because besides this main entryway / ballroom type of area, every single room is themed differently, and I didn't want to like cut one of the princesses from being able to see like how it was decorated because they were all very unique. So I decided to leave all of the footage in and kind of keep a bit of a longer video. I will point out that there are actually 2 bathrooms in this location as well, which are also required for the lot type, and they are at the front when you first walk in there. To either side there's 2 identical bathrooms that are kind of tucked in those little hallway areas, and then you have this main ballroom space. So when I was doing research, I came across a ton of concept art from when they must have been designing the Fairy Tale Hall in Disney World, and honestly I have to say a lot of the original concept art was way better than how it actually turned out. I'm going to preface that so much. I have never been in person, and I'm sure it is very impressive, very beautiful. I did see a lot of videos and some tours and stuff like that of how it looks on the interior, but the concept art was stunning and like truly inspiring. And I just loved how they had this like almost ballroom looking entryway. So I really wanted to recreate that first. Now, one of the things that I finally got to play with when we first started building for the interior of this location was the new sectional couches. This is the first opportunity I've had to use any like interior decor from the Dream Home pack, and I didn't even know how the sectional stuff worked. Thank God I was live on Twitch when I actually started building because people had to direct me through how to actually do this, but it works very similar to like counters and things like that. You can connect pieces by basically picking which shape you want to do, and you can create so much. It's not just sectional couches and chairs that you are now able to do. It's like these sectional ottomans, and you can do those like gorgeous ottomans that you would see almost in like a master closet, and I think obviously that was very intentional, but I'm really excited. But I did kind of think, my impression was that it was making it so that most of the couches and chairs in the catalog are now sectional, which is not true. It's actually only the ones that come with Dream Home, and if I'm wrong, somebody correct me down below, but that was what I was kind of noticing, which is totally fine, and I hope that they add more in the future. That is like my biggest thing whenever something that I think is really, really cool like this, that is so like, I would almost say needed in build mode. Like now that I've been able to taste it and experience it, I feel like it's so needed. They don't lock it exclusively to just the one pack, and maybe even do like a base game update later where a couple of the ones in the catalog are optionally sectional as well, which it very well could be. I've not had a chance to go through every single one in the catalog, but based after what I was looking at, it was just kind of the ones from Dream Home, and they really work well in here. They do have sort of this like Get Famous royal looking aesthetic that I felt like fit in here. And this is where I also featured the bar. So like I said, I don't think I really would have wanted to do the bar just because when I do think of Disney princesses and having a lot that's themed after the princesses, I almost think of a more like childlike location. And even like karaoke itself, this could easily be a location that you do like children's birthday parties or things like that. But then when you add the bar, it almost adds like this element of adultness, which is totally fine as well. And I think because I was basing this off of the fairy tale hall, I was again thinking of like character meet and greets for the princesses. So again, it has like that childlike element to it. But this place really ended up turning out super elegant, and it's not necessarily for children in any way, although I think you're allowed to bring children to sing and like do the whole thing here, and you probably could throw a birthday party, and I'm sure that adult Sims would be very excited to have the bar. It just wasn't something that I like initially had thought to put into the lot, but it ended up working out. It looks really good in this main area. Now, some of this location does feature some hallways and passageways that are outside. And I actually did that on purpose because to me, I wanted this place to look like a combination of like a presidential hall type of place and a castle, where you do have a lot of passages and corridors and things that would be maybe outside. So the stairs that lead to the rooms upstairs are outside, and then there is a pathway above them that is also outside. So that is exposed to the elements, and I hope that doesn't bother too many of you, but I kind of did it intentionally in the design of the floor plan because I thought that it did bring like the castle element into the build. Now we're going to start getting into some of the rooms, and that is basically going to take up the rest of the video. So first we have Tiana, and thank God I have already done Tiana's home because I really had a good grasp of how I wanted this room to be themed because of the fact that I've already done a home for her. I think if I hadn't done a home for her, this would have been a really big struggle, but the furniture in here basically matches the stuff that I have used in her house. So it's a little bit of a mix of Realm of Magic, some vampires, and I wanted to do obviously like green and hints of green for Tiana without it being like overwhelmingly green. And there's also the 1940s aspect, or 1920s, excuse me, aspect of the Princess and the Frog movie. So you want to kind of combine all of that. Now, because again, this is based after the fairy tale hall, I thought it would be a really good idea to have the karaoke machines kind of featured on their own stage at the front of the room, and then we would have like seating under the stage, so whoever is going to go sing, they kind of get up on the stage. And then there was also like another thing that I thought would be a really fun feature for this location. So the fairy tale hall in Disney World is a character meet and greet location. So some of the concept art showed like you would go in, you meet a Disney princess, and they're kind of posed in front of these backdrops that are indicative of like the locations from their movie. So like Aurora would be stationed in front of like a picture of her castle or something from the kingdom or something from her movie. And then when you get the pictures taken with Aurora, you kind of have this whole scene done where you're in front of something from the movie, and it's like this whole featured space. So I wanted to maybe bring that idea into this build and have it almost double as like a character meet and greet, although obviously that's not a feature in The Sims and that's not something that this lot is actually for. I wanted it to kind of pay tribute to the idea of the fairy tale hall by having that as like an additional aspect in every single room. So I was recently scrolling through Twitter and it came to my attention that we are now able to do CC-free custom paintings once again. So this used to be a feature in like older versions of the game, and then they patched it out, and it basically means that your Sims can paint something from reference, and then you used to be able to upload those paintings to the gallery and they would not be marked as custom content. And the reason that that was such a cool feature is because they could be used in so many different ways, and it meant that you could get like additional wallpaper, additional pictures and paintings for your Sims homes, and then re-upload those to the gallery and not have them flagged as custom content. And then I think about half a year ago they patched it out and everybody was really mad about it, but they never really did anything to put it back. It was like very much an intentional patch. And it recently came to my attention that this is something that people have figured out a workaround for, which is really big news for the Disney save, because that means that some of the things I've done in the past, like Gaston's, for example, where I really wanted to have the portrait of Gaston in the location, but I wasn't able to because I tried to do the Disney save without custom content, we would have to do two versions where one is a CC version and one is without, because one features the painting and the other does not. But now that I know there is like the ability to add custom paintings back into lots without the gallery marking it as CC, this was really exciting news for me. And I immediately thought of this location. It was like all really, really great timing that I came across this just in time to start this build, because I wanted to do custom portraits of the princesses for each room, specifically because this hall in Disney World features paintings, these like beautiful paintings of the princesses. I wanted to see if I could find some high quality versions of those and make them as paintings to go into this lot. And then I also wanted to do custom backdrops on the back of each stage in every single room so that we could have the same like character meet and greet experience and have each room have two like very specific paintings that coordinate with the decor and help give like the whole feel of the princess. There's no way that you can mistake every single room. They're basically marked. So this took me an entire day to figure out, but I managed to do it. I managed to get these portraits all done and the backdrops for every single princess, and they are included in the build. So I've actually uploaded those to the gallery. My gallery ID is down below, but it is TomilynYT if you'd like to search me on the gallery. I recently released 2 rooms, and one of them features the portraits that are used in this build today, and the other one features the backdrops. And they're stunning. I'm very excited to have this up on my gallery as being unmarked for CC. If you are console player, you are whatever, you are a player that cannot have custom content, if you download those from my gallery, it will not flag as CC. You can use them just as normal. They will appear how they do on the gallery. In fact, I would even say that the gallery is, of course, butchering how they actually appear. The pictures themselves are very dark and maybe a little bit oversaturated, but in person and in game, they look phenomenal. And they're not featured in the building portion of the rooms here because they're thrown in at the end. I basically built this entire location and then went around and added the paintings after it took me almost an entire day to figure out how to do this. But I'm so excited. I think that they look so good. And like I said, the screenshots at the end of the video are going to show those off. So stay tuned so that you can check that out. And also, when I upload this to the gallery, if you download it, you will get the portraits just how they're being shown in this build as well. So don't worry about the custom content aspect at all. I promise you it is something that is completely downloadable, and I'm so excited because this means that I can go back and update Gaston's. And I think I had mentioned when I did the Arendelle Castle that I really wanted to do some paintings of King Agnar and Aduna that are featured sort of throughout the castle and you can see throughout the movie, and maybe even Elsa. And now I'm going to be able to go back and actually add those in and then re-upload those lots to the gallery and not have them flag as CC, which is super exciting news. And I can only imagine some of the things that I'm going to be able to do later on, or maybe update some of the museums and stuff that we do, like the one I have in Willow Creek with some custom photos. And nothing too, like, my biggest thing with doing this is that I really didn't want to have it be like PNGs of the Disney princesses and have it be sort of like tacky or something that you would see on like a blanket. I wanted these really elegant paintings that they have featured in the hall. And because they don't have 2 of the princesses featured, being Cinderella and Ariel, that I included in today's build but are not actually included as portraits in the hall, I did have to go into Photoshop and make my own version of these portraits, one for Ariel, one for Cinderella, and I tried to match them the best that I could. They're definitely a little bit off because they're my own creation and not something that Disney has like kind of created with all of the other ones in mind, but I think that they do serve well for this. And I think that I'm excited that I can kind of dip my toes into the idea of all of this stuff. Featuring the rooms though, so the Tiana room and the Snow White room, which is the one that I was working on previously, are right next to one another. And in the Snow White room, each of them kind of features something that is obviously very unique to the character. And the Snow White room has 7 of those little gnome, aka dwarf statues that are kind of scattered throughout the room. And if you noticed when I was decorating, there's actually one in the flower box outside the window. So this was something that was brought up by Twitch chat when I was building in Tiana's room, because I really wanted to use the frog fountain in her room so we could do like a subtle nod to the frogs without it being like overwhelming, let's do frogs all over the room, having the frog fountain. But because it's such an outdoor item and you don't want to just have water like spraying into the room, one of my mods had suggested putting the frog in the flower box outside the window. So when you look out the windows, you can kind of see that there is something in the flower box that, again, pays tribute to the princess that the room is themed after. And then we had to go ahead and theme all of the flower boxes like that. So each of the rooms has a flower box that, if you look into, has something special about it for the princess. And for Snow White, we did some apples, and I did put one of the gnomes outside. And I think for Rapunzel, which is the room that we're currently working on, and again, Rapunzel's room is based after her castle interior, which is most of the locations for each of the Disney princesses. I picked their castle's interior unless they didn't have one. So for Tiana, she does not have a castle, so I went ahead with something that is based after the home that I already gave her. And I think for Sleeping Beauty, hers is based after the tower that she's in the movie. And that was basically just because there was a lot of really great reference for that. Oh, and Mulan as well. Mulan does not have a castle, so Mulan's room is also based after her home. But if they had a castle, I basically went with the interior for it. But Rapunzel's room features sunflowers in the flower box and a tiny castle that you can get from Debug that reminded me a little bit of hers. Mulan's has, I think, a little dragon statue, and she also has a sword that I'm going to have to use a little bit of tool so that we can almost have it sticking out of the flower box. And one thing that I did find to be a little bit interesting, this is the first karaoke bar that I'm ever making. So whenever I'm like making a new lot that I've never done before, I think the requirements for the lot are always a little perplexing to me. Like, they're never exactly what I think they're going to be. And something that was required here was 2 dining tables. I have no idea why. I don't even think you can get food here other than maybe ordering something small from the bar. So maybe they wanted you to have an area where you could take that food. And I didn't even notice that that was a requirement for the lot until I was doing Mulan's room, because something that I had featured in Mulan's house were these snowy escape tables that are basically some of the only things that we have that are like close to the culture of like or similarly styled, I would say, to the tables that you would see in Mulan, because they're so low to the ground. Obviously this is like the Japanese version of it, and it's very specific what it is, so it's not the same, but it's one of the only things that we do have. So I was like, oh, it'll be kind of fun if we feature that, and here's like the little seating arrangement off of the stage, and it's unique to the room versus like Rapunzel's that's set up more like a castle that has lots of chairs, and then the other 2 are set up more like living rooms almost. This is a little bit unique, and I realized that by placing this, I was clearing a requirement, which is 2 dining tables. So this is featured in Mulan's room as like a special little thing, and I actually think you can prep food on this, or there are certain types of food that you need this table for. I've never played with it, so again, someone in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but my understanding is something like that. Also, just to throw this out there as a special detail, Tiana's room also features a mini fridge, which I know doesn't really match up with the time period of her movie or like the aesthetic of the lot at all. But I was like, if we're gonna do food on this lot, who's the one Disney princess that goes hand in hand with food? Probably Tiana. So if, and in my opinion, never been to a karaoke bar as well, so again, I don't know, but I would assume that some of them have like beverage counters or mini fridges, and then you pay for what you take, and that just kind of would be the vibe as far as I could tell. So I was like, we're not gonna pop mini fridges into every room, but we could definitely put it in one. And who are we gonna do that with? Obviously Tiana. Moving on upstairs, we have Jasmine's room, and I think this is my favorite one. I finally got to use the new kit, which is like the, I think it's called Courtyard Oasis stuff, and this is the first time I've been able to use this stuff, but the first time I saw it, I was immediately like, this is going to be perfect for when we do Aladdin themed things. That, and weirdly enough, I feel like paranormal stuff, a lot of the furniture shape is really great, and movie hangout stuff as well. Like the combination of those packs, I feel like I'm going to be able to knock some of the Aladdin builds out of the park with all of them. But this is my first time being able to use some of these beautiful like columns and special things. Oh, as well as City Living comes with a little bit of stuff that really works for like Aladdin and that kind of theming. But yeah, just really haven't had a chance to use it. I have been doing, like, I did the garden lot previously. If you missed it, I built a fairy water garden based after Silver Mist. That was the speed build right before this one. So that was a lot of landscaping and plants and things like that. And I've been also doing like a lot of Create-A-Sim and haven't really gotten a chance to use some of the newer packs, being the new kit and the Dream Home one. So this was exciting to finally be able to touch on some of this stuff. I was originally using this like brown tile in here because I am, for every single one of the rooms, pulling up like an interior reference from the castle that they're from. So for Jasmine, I was pulling up some references of her room, and the floor was like a marbly brown tan, and I was originally using this Jungle Adventure one, but I did switch it out because it doesn't really match with the rest of the room. It was more marble, whereas this one was more like stone and just kind of threw the entire room off, so that does get replaced. As far as the flower box on the outside of her window, she has a little cat, which is supposed to be Raja, and one of my mods again pointed out that that was a funny thing that I accidentally didn't mean to do, but basically in the movie, Jafar turns Raja into a kitten, so it kind of works. My reasoning for doing it was that it's one of the only items we have in game that looks even close to like a tiger type of item without just putting like a tiger. I think there's one tiger rug that I probably could have used in here. And then one of the new items that comes with the kit is this cute little set of like glassware, and one of them on the top of it looks a bit like the genie's lamp, so I did hide that additionally in the flower box outside. And then we have, oh my god, whose room is this? Oh, okay, so this is Snow White's room, or no, Sleeping Beauty's room, excuse me. Now, when I was doing research for this, I was trying with the same that I did with the rest of them, which was basically like castle interior. So Snow White's castle interior, or basically like anything from the movie that I could find for reference of like an interior, or, you know, for even Rapunzel or something like that. I could have done the interior of her tower rather than her castle, but I was a little bit more inspired by the castle, so I did go ahead with that idea. Instead, actually, in Rapunzel's room, her portrait on the back wall features the tower, so it's almost like you're looking out the window at the tower and you're inside of the castle, so that's kind of a unique thing to that room. But I couldn't find a lot of really great reference for Sleeping Beauty's castle, probably because her character is not really the main focal point of the movie, which many of you know. So some of the best reference from the movie was the tower that she's kept in when she is asleep. And it had these really weird, like, checkered floors, which I was not a huge fan of. It looks correct aesthetically in the movie, but I was like, I really don't want to put this in this build. It's going to look so funny. We do have these Get Famous tiles that are a little bit more elegant, and I think in the movie it is black and white checkered, but it looked so Alice in Wonderland and just like odd to me. So I decided to change it to blue, and then I was like, why don't we just theme the rest of the room blue and pink and have everything sort of transitioning from blue to pink and have that be like the theming of the room. Where Aurora really has like a lack of character, she doesn't have a ton of lines in the movie and like character development, she's definitely one of the more difficult characters to theme an entire like build or room off of, because there's not as many things about her that really go hand in hand. But the blue pink thing and the dress is something that I think a lot of people will go with for her character. So it just made a lot of sense to do this like darker, dimly lit, very old style castle interior with this pink and blue back and forth color. And you will notice this is something that is like a huge bummer about this build, because honestly, I think this is my favorite build in Mount Komorebi and one of my favorite builds that I've done in a long time. I just love how everything in here came out. But something that was really aggravating during the building process of this is the little bit of roof that's peeking into every room on the upper floor. It is solely because of the platforms that I'm using. It's a glitch that comes with platforms and trying to use a platform on like an upper level floor. And when I tell you that I sat for hours and tried to re-roof this place so that the roof would not come into the rooms like that, I tried everything that I know how to do. I do not claim to be like a really great roofer by any means, but I tried every shape, every size, and I couldn't get anything that covered the entire way around, fit correctly, and didn't peek into the rooms like this. Even if I made them smaller, they were still peeking in. It's probably because it's a combination of the platforms and being on the edge of the lot. But at the end of the day, it's a Sims glitch. It's something that's not supposed to be happening. I did try to redraw the room for anybody that's going to comment and tell me to redraw the room. I did it 150 times. It doesn't do anything. It is because I'm using a platform on an upstairs level. It's just a glitch that comes with using platforms, and it's aggravating that those things continue to stand in The Sims. I have no doubt that that will be a problem until the end of The Sims lifetime. Like, I'm so confident in that, but it's really aggravating because it ruins like a little bit of the decor of like these upstairs rooms with a little bit of blue peeking. But please just ignore it. Let's like all collectively decide to ignore it, because I honestly love how this location turned out so much. So I just decided, you know what, we're gonna ignore it. There's nothing you can do, and I just gotta kind of decorate around it and cover up as much of it as I possibly can. So I do apologize for that. I hope it's something that they fix down the line, but I really do not think so. Then we have the final two in this build, and that is Cinderella and Ariel. So like I mentioned, each of the princesses that's featured in the hall is of the previous rooms that we've done so far. So that is the original 6 that have like the portraits in the hall. And then I had room for 2 more, and I wanted to add Cinderella and Ariel. Cinderella, I think, makes a lot of sense because she is like the Disney princess. The fact that she didn't have a portrait and wasn't like a main feature of the hall, although I think you can get character meet and greets from her at this location, that was my understanding. She didn't have like a portrait to go with it. So I was a little bit bummed about that. I was kind of, I don't know, it probably has something to do with the fact that she has an entire castle, right? And that you could go do a character meet and greet there, and I'm sure there is like beautiful portraits and stuff of her in that castle. But I felt like we had to probably add it to this build. I think she is probably the one that is the most iconic and makes the most sense to do here. As far as Ariel goes, she's my favorite. So if I'm going to have an opportunity to include her, she's going to get included. That's just how it goes. I make the rules. I'm sorry. But for her castle, I think that's something that's really like such a huge bummer about like the redesign of the Disney princesses is the fact that they've really leaned into Cinderella having her blue dress, which if you remember from the movie, her dress is like the lightest of powder blue whites almost. It's beautiful, and the castle and the movie itself, it does have this like glowing blue undertone to it, but a lot of the shots from the movie are white and white drapery and white columns and this like beautiful, pure, very bright castle, and I was so excited to be able to do something like that in here. It's so opposite to Sleeping Beauty's castle that's like very dark. The outside of that is very nice, but the interior of it, very dark. Colors are like classically gray castle, whereas this one is just like elegant, light golds, whites, very pretty. So I leaned into that in here, and a lot of the shots that I was seeing from the movie, everything has this like pink and blue glow to it. So I decided to hide some lava lamps in the walls and under the drapes and stuff in here to give like a glow to this room that's very unique, and it fades from the pink in the front of the room where the stage is to the blue in the back of the room. Now this room also features the sectional couches in here. There's some new ones that come with the Dream Home kit that are really pretty, and I felt super elegant that could get used in here. They're a little bit modern, but I still think that they really work. Something else that's important to point out when you guys are seeing the building of this video, the upstairs walls are set at like the first wall height. And later on when I added the portraits, I wanted to size up the ones that were the location portraits that go at the back of the stages. They weren't really fitting and they weren't grand enough at this height. So I decided to make the upstairs match the downstairs and be at the second wall height. So that version of the build is the one that you'll get in the save file, and obviously the one that you'll see on the gallery. And it's just a little bit taller. All of the drapes have been moved up appropriately, and it makes it so that the portraits can fit a lot better. And then lastly, we have Miss Ariel, and her castle is obviously Eric's, so the interior of this room is based after a bit of Eric's castle. I changed some of the colors to be a little bit more in line with Ariel, mainly the floor and doing like the seafoam green. And a lot of the decor in here is also just like anything I could find that was seashell, seaweed, anything that could mix well in a room like this that isn't like overwhelmingly ocean, or we're trying to do like this under the water type of themed room. That was not what I wanted to do. That wasn't my intention. So I much rather would have had like this classic castle, beach castle look to the interior and have it be based off Eric's castle, and then maybe just modify some of the colors here and there. So initially this was like my least favorite room, which is funny because Ariel is my favorite. I just wasn't a big fan of how it turned out, and I didn't think there was anything super unique about it. But then I went and did the portraits and the landscape photos, and the one for Eric's castle that I used on the back wall behind the stage, it's my favorite. So it all kind of worked out in the end, and I think that altogether it looks really, really nice. Like I mentioned again, I did have to do custom portraits for Cinderella and Ariel, so theirs are a little bit different than the ones that are used in the other rooms, but I tried to mask it and make it look as similar as I possibly could using my own like custom Photoshop work, which I am very minimally skilled at. And again, I'll just preface that those are available on the gallery individually if you would like any of the paintings, and this build will be up as soon as possible along with all of the other ones as I start the process of testing this world, because we are basically at the end here, and so that means it's time to test and get this version of the Disney Save out and available for download, and do a world tour video and probably a world tour stream of not only this world but Forgotten Hollow as well, that I never got to do a tour video for, or a stream video that we tour for. So look forward to that in the next couple of weeks, coming up with some content. And any moment we're going to be moving into the screenshots that feature these beautiful portraits that I'm very excited about. So hopefully you stay tuned to check those out. This was a bit of a long video today, but thank you so much if you have stayed this long. I really, really appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. Also, let me know what was your favorite build in Mount Komorebi, or your favorite household in Mount Komorebi. And hopefully you're just as excited as I am for Windenburg and Henford on Bagley that we're going to do together next. And I'm excited to start the planning process of that as well. It's going to be many Disney princess themed things, cottages, castles. Very much, this build is very much a good transition into some of the stuff that we're going to be working on for the next couple of months, actually, with Windenburg and all that. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below, or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post. And I will talk to you all in the next one.